This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 394 of the More Than Just Code podcast. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And once again, we're joined by Peter Witham in Hurst, Texas.
Howdy.
And we're also joined by Josh Hrach in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hello.
Right, so you're the only one in the weird time zone there, I guess, Josh, right? Because you don't do the daylight thing or whatever?
Yeah, so technically it's weird because we don't switch clocks, so we're sometimes with California and Apple time, as I like to call it, during the summer, so dub, I know what time it is. Half the year we're with Colorado, but technically Arizona's always Mountain Standard, I believe, and just never changes to daylight. I don't know, it's confusing. Just don't change your clocks, people. That's what I've learned. Just don't change your clocks.
Okay, so you're in not Apple time right now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought it was summer for a second there. Maybe it must have been the 2 feet of snow outside my house.
That's what it is.
That.
Well,
yeah.
It was a high of 74 degrees out here in Phoenix, so it almost could be summer for some people.
All right, well, so we're back. I did a solo episode last time, so I have some fact check on my own self because there wasn't any co-host there to step on my toes and tell me I was saying things wrong. I was talking about spatial scene, which is the new sort of 3D effect you can get on your phone or in Vision Pro, and it uses machine learning, not AI, like I said on the show. So I'm sure people were throwing things at their phones. In Canada, surprisingly, we do have the millimeter wave antenna on the top of our iPhone 17 Pros. I actually have one in my hand, but I didn't realize that we had that. I thought it was something US only, or at least not in Canada. The aluminum, if you prefer, on the iPhone 17 Pro also helps to dissipate heat. It's not just about the weight or whatever, but it's about heat dissipation. And I think I talked about Genoc. I didn't know what it was when I talked about it, but it's for syncing multiple iPhone 17 Pros. So for a single shot, like bullet time, I don't know if you're familiar with bullet time, there's like multiple cameras, multiple phones taking pictures at the same time, and then they can make these sort of freeze frame but panning shots, right? So that's what Genoc does. And that was part of either the iPhone 17 Pro, oh, here we go, with the fact check, right? Or with iOS 26. So I did have a follow-up question on the last episode, which was called Orange is the New Black, and I was curious to see who amongst us, what phones are you guys using right now? As I mentioned, I have an iPhone 17 Pro in orange. What do you guys got?
Well, I have a white iPhone 15 Pro. I'm very happy with it, and I've stuck with it for a few reasons. One, financial. It's nice to get off the iPhone upgrade program, but also the 15 Pro was the first Pro phone to get USB-C, and of the recent Pro phones, it's also the lightest. So I've seen people complain about the weight of the 17 Pro being heavier than the 16. Well, it would be heavier than mine too. So I'm very happy with my phone. So it's light. It's got the connectivity I need. I am disappointed it didn't come in orange. And I'm equally disappointed that whatever the 18 Pro ends up being, they probably won't have orange either. So that's kind of a bummer for me, because otherwise I would have gotten an orange phone.
Wow. Well, maybe you can get a used one or something next year. How about you, Peter? What are you rocking?
So I do have the iPhone 15 Pro as well. I've got the silver version. And this one, when I got it, was a conscious downgrade from whatever it is, the Mega Max, because I actually wanted the smaller form factor. And I agree with Josh. Also because USB-C everywhere, and it had to be on my phone too. So I have not got an orange phone. I do love that color though.
Okay. And Jaime, what are you doing these days?
Still rocking it's 3 for 3 here. The iPhone 15 Pro in white or silver, if you prefer. I was really hemming and hawing whether to get the 17 Pro. I decided not to, so I'll just wait for the 18. I never would have gone for the orange. That's not my thing. People who have listened to the show know I have been rocking the white, not since the beginning. I did have a black iPhone 4S, but if they come up with the purple, and I always say not lavender, not lilac. I mean like Prince deep purple rain. I'm like, yes, there you go. That's the color I'd go with it. So I'd be very finicky on that. I am open to changing colors, but I'll probably go with the white silver next time too.
Yeah, it's funny. I skipped the iPhone 15 Pro because I had a 14, and of course, that was the year the Vision Pro came out, and I missed out on the spatial photo thing. So I got a 16 the year after, and now my wife I upgraded to that one. So now I can take spatial photos with either one. And I take, Josh and I are on a Vision Pro FaceTime call every couple of weeks, and we share our fabulous photos that way as well. I did post some Ask MTJC questions on the interwebs, but I don't know that I got any responses. So a few people liked the questions, but I didn't follow up to see if anybody, I don't know if you're even looking at other social networking tools these days other than Instagram, right? So
more in like read-only mode for the other socials, I think.
Right,
for the most part. LinkedIn is honestly like the most social media stuff I do, but it's more like business Twitter from back in the day. It's not really, personal thoughts and feelings. It's not really the tech crowd per se. It's more business-like.
To be fair, this is the More Than Just Code podcast, which, well, LinkedIn businessy stuff would be the non-code part of that. So never know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's move on to the reason why we're here is we want to talk about AI and how we as developers are using the tool. But before we get to that, we have some news items to sort of discuss. And one of them is surprisingly about AI, or about Apple Intelligence, let's call it. And this was an article that I posted in the show notes about Apple and their new work with collaboration Yeah, basically they're working with Google Gemini now. I'm at a loss for words here. I need some AI tools to help me speak. But so what do you guys think? Like, I mean, Siri's taken a lot of beatings over the last little while about Apple promised us a sort of personalized Siri back in 2023, I think, 24. Where are we? 24, 23, somewhere in there, and they were unable to deliver, and so they've taken a lot of beatings. Or, I mean, I'm sure Apple doesn't really, live by what's said in the press, but a lot of us on the outside have looked at it and wondered. So what do you guys think about the combination of Apple, Siri, and Google Gemini?
So I do have some thoughts on this, and they're kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I think number one, this is a smart move by Apple. They could not solve their own problem, and there's a solution that works. And they need to get away from the dreadful PR that hangs around from, so-called Apple Intelligence that never was. So that's a smart move. But on the flip side, they're opening themselves up for a whole new, beating on the internet. And I'm sure they won't care, but it's going to be the thing of, Apple's had to go to Google to solve their problem, right? But, from a purely technical aspect, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's interesting that I don't remember the specifics, but they have this deal with Google to use Gemini, but Apple, I think, is going to generate its own models, if I remember rightly. So I guess it is technically Apple Intelligence still, right? Not Google Intelligence.
Yeah, it's supposed to be running on a device still. I mean, that's Apple's sort of claim to fame on the whole privacy side of things.
Yeah, and remember how they created this too. They created Apple Intelligence on device with the main foundation model, but then they built the different adapters on top of it. So
right,
Apple's still able to focus it in the way they need to on their device. They're just subbing out what's underneath for what everyone seems to be agreeing is a better model. So Apple's still able to do the Apple-y thing, which is probably the route they should have gone to begin with.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they're sort of Apple's getting this deal for free, right? Because of the amount of money that Google pays Apple to have them as a search engine and so on anyway, this is really just Google paying a bit of that by giving them, this AI. It's not like Apple's really spending money on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a good move now. I think folks will naturally wonder, hey, weren't they partnered with OpenAI and ChatGPT? And I think at the time at which that was done, also in sort of a quick, make it happen, we're behind kind of way, they were, I think, clearly a cut above. That's less true now. Folks like Anthropic with Claude and Google with Gemini have clearly caught up in many respects and or have exceeded depending on the kind of use case you're looking at, right? I think image generation, people are just astounded with Google Gemini's VO and Nano Banana and other bits. And from a coding perspective, it still seems like Claude is still front runner. But ChatGPT is kind of the come one, come all. So you don't really have a natural, obvious technical sort of win one way or the other, or even a loss. So that's good. From the business side, I think it makes a lot of sense here, given that, it's kind of unclear at the moment exactly how ChatGPT will continue to make money. They're definitely trying things like ads and other bits. Claude seems to have gone well into the enterprise and selling to professional developers. Google needs Gemini to not necessarily make money directly, right? They need it to be just like Google Search, the one-stop shop to do things on the interwebs. And that fits pretty nicely, I think, with having Google Search as the default for Safari search and other things. So it just feels like it makes sense.
So, Josh, I think you might have said this already, but are we thinking that somehow we're going to download some sort of Gemini model to the device and then run around doing things? Because currently you can opt into having ChatGPT, piggyback on top of, I'm doing air quotes, Apple Intelligence. But is that what we're thinking is going to happen? Is going to be like some sort of Google, like transportable Google thing, so it's on your phone that it's still doing the AI?
I don't think we're going to have to choose that. I feel like the part that you download for Apple Intelligence, they'll just swap that out to Gemini. That would be the path with least friction for users. Otherwise, they would have to specifically download a separate model. And it doesn't sound like they're offering this as a separate option. It seems like it's meant to actually power Apple Intelligence, not be side by side with what they've already built. So it makes sense that they would just replace what's underneath, and it just becomes this larger download, either at the time of update or, after you update, they say you need to, refresh Apple Intelligence or whatever. And in the fine print, it'll say powered by Google Gemini or whatever the legalese they had to put there for the agreement.
Yeah, but my question is, do you think it's going to go to the cloud to do its calculations, or is it going to be local on the device still?
Well, from everything Apple has done with Apple Intelligence, it's got that multi-tiered approach. So it starts on device, but if it can't do it on device, then it goes to the cloud. I don't think Apple's going to change that with their stance on privacy. So this will probably be a form of it that runs on device, probably the same model that Google, is already using on device, which works well for their handsets. So I don't see Apple necessarily routing it to Gemini servers. It's still going to be an on-device first, just they'll be working with what Google's developed, which, again, Google's always kind of been more of the AI company when compared to Apple. So for this type of move, it will be an upgrade.
Apple has to have some kind of level on their device, or they are essentially, they have walked back everything at that point they've ever said about Apple and AI, right? Remember how they were saying when this whole thing started, like you mentioned, Josh, it's on device. So they have to have something on the device. Otherwise, it's a complete failure on the Apple side at that point, right?
And it wasn't just on device. Then what was the next layer up? The next layer wasn't even going to OpenAI. The next layer was going to Apple's private cloud compute architecture, which was still entirely private. No other company is getting it. Even if what's running on those now starts using Gemini models, that's still going to be a more privacy-conscious way of doing AI than spitting out your request right to Google Gemini itself, which is probably maybe available as a third-tier option, though right now that still is a ChatGPT. But they did say, even when it was first announced, that layer would be something that you could modify in the future. So if you wanted Gemini or other models besides ChatGPT to be available as that third-tier AI layer, you could. That's still a possibility here.
I think, when it comes down to it, Apple would rather everybody did not know that there was Google under the hood here, because I want to sort of put a question out to all of you. I'm curious about your thoughts regarding, at the end of the day, your average user and everything else on the internet, right? If people see Google, they immediately think, well, there goes my privacy, data mining me, and so on and so on. And what do you think the kind of risk there is to Apple from a perception standpoint, regardless of how hard Apple tries to convince us that it's secure?
Well, you know what? Not everybody believes that Apple is
sure,
on device only. I have family members who swear that they put the tinfoil hats on and all that kind of stuff, and they tell me that Apple is mining everything, and I'm like, they're not. I mean, at the end of the day, Google makes money off of advertisers, Meta makes money off of Apple advertisers, Apple makes money off of iPhones, right? So the hidden agenda doesn't seem to be there for Apple. There's no incentive for them to be data mining you at all.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to imply.
No, yeah. I don't mean. I mean that's my answer to how I think Apple is positioned, right? Or positioning themselves, in spite of what my family members think. But I mean so to me, the trust factor is, I think, I'm not sure maybe it was you, Peter, that raised it, the Google trust factor. I don't trust Google as far as I can throw them, and same with Amazon and Netflix and even, I mean, I remind family members all the time, if you have a credit card, you're being data mined. Every time you make a purchase, they're telling everybody else what you're purchasing, right? So, but I want to believe Apple's privacy is on device, and that they don't care what's on your phone, so which is why they encrypt everything with your passcode and stuff.
Don't forget, too, how they announced this. While they officially announced this, and by they I mean both Apple and Google, this wasn't a flashy press release. This wasn't something that's posted prominently on their newsroom. This was something that was broken by other news publications when they got wind of it. So Apple themselves are not trying to make it all flashy because of what we just talked about, that whole idea of, now Google's getting all of my Siri requests and all of these things, and now I can't trust my devices and what I say around my iPhones. So Apple is purposely trying to keep that low key, probably to avoid that very thing.
All right, well, we're going to come back to AI in a bit. Let's sort of circle back on some of the other stories that we've been following. I guess on Monday they announced a new AirTag 2, which has a new ultra-wideband chip and promises, greater searches and that kind of stuff. So you guys have any thoughts on AirTags? Do you use them? I mean, I have probably 12 of them in circulation right now, but how do you guys think about the AirTags?
I've never used them, but I do think they're a good idea. I just don't have a use case for them. But the thing that struck me as I was reading the information, and even when I went to other sites like Mac Rumors and so on, everywhere was saying about, it's 1.5x the range and so on. But I couldn't find anywhere.
What is the range?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I could say it's 10x if I don't tell you the number, right?
It's more. It's much more.
Yeah. So I don't even know what the range on these things is like. I presume, of course, they're talking about the, local. I know this works at a super massive range. We've all read the stories about people finding their luggage in other countries. But, it's like, what is that 1.5x? But yeah, I've never used them, but I do think that they're a good idea.
Yeah, I use them in luggage. And like you said, in fact, there's some airports are letting you share your AirTag information with them so they can give you actual updates on your luggage too. Now that's another side note here, not in the story, but I use them, I use them on my cars and, my, keys and keys around the house, because our keys live in a central point in our house, but they tend to wander away in somebody's pocket. I have one in my car, have one on my Vision Pro, because it doesn't have, when the battery's dead, it doesn't have any way of finding itself. So yeah, like I said, we have a ton of them that we use on backpacks and things like that, and which is, so they're handy to find things that way, right? But I think like the Tile. I was a Tile user before AirTags came along. I think they piggyback on other Apple networks. Like I think they kind of, that's how they communicate through iCloud and things like that, to tell you that you're. I've watched my luggage come back following me from Heathrow. Like I can see it getting put on the plane. I can see it, down in going through security and that kind of stuff while I'm looking at it in the Find My app, right? How about you, Jaime or Josh? Any thoughts on AirTags?
I don't personally use AirTags. I was happy with the improvements that they did announce and saying that you can, I think they said a full year on a single battery charge.
Yeah.
Which is nice, because the one thing I don't like about AirTags is that it's not a rechargeable battery. You have to replace the battery, which is why I'm personally a fan of Pebblebee, because they have similarly sized trackers, but you can charge them with USB-C. If AirTags did that, I would switch to AirTags in a heartbeat. But other than that, I think the idea of an AirTag or something like it is definitely essential for, like you said, for keys, for vehicles, for luggage, the top things probably that you want to keep track of. It's worth having something like that around so that you can track something. It really helps to alleviate those headaches.
Yeah, I mean, the batteries do last surprisingly long, but there's a product on Amazon you can buy that will power it's a case you put your AirTag into, and you can power it off 2 AA batteries, and apparently it lasts a year or something like that, right? But then you've got this lozenge shaped thing that you have to put in. Not like you hang it on your dog's collar kind of thing. But
Yeah.
although they do say in the articles not to use them to track your pets, but I know tons of cats and dogs that have AirTags on them as well, right around my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, it's so now into other hardware news. I don't know if you read the article I posted about MacBook Pro. Obviously, I think what do we have is it M5 in the Mac Mini currently or in the iPad?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So we don't have an M5 MacBook Pro, but apparently, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, I think his name is, he's written here that there's rumors that they're planning on doing 2 updates this year, or possibly 2 updates to the MacBook Pro line.
I don't believe it.
Well, I mean, they don't have a Max or an Ultra yet, right? So they currently just have the M5 chip.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't believe even Apple, with their obsession with money, I don't believe even Apple could convince enough people to upgrade a MacBook Pro twice in 1 year. Because logically, I don't know about anybody else, but I'd be looking and going, okay, well then I'll just wait for the one later in the year that must be better.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't mean that. I think what they did, we're talking about 2023, right? Because they did oh yeah, that's right. They had the M2 Pro and M2 Max, and they did M3 Pro and M3 Max
it doesn't
in the same calendar year. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I think even the most diehard among us, maybe, upgrade once a year. Yeah, there's no way no one's going to.
Once every 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got my M4 Mac Mini here. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I just don't believe enough people would upgrade twice in 1 year, unless you was on one of those programs where, some of those vendors, some of those big box stores, where you can just say, I want the new one, and you take the old one back. But I just don't see it happening.
my question, is Apple intending you to buy the next one? Now, with an iPhone...
I don't think so. I don't think they're like phones, like you upgrade every year. I think the idea is... I think the M2, M3 coming out in the same year was probably a fluke in terms of their progress, right? But I definitely think we'll get an M5 Mac.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes.
No question.
Well, so we do have an M5 MacBook Pro now. It's just the base model 14-inch with an M5. There's no Pro or Max chips yet. That'll probably be that rumored spring update that we're hearing about. But just even look how they're marketing that M5 right now on their webpage. They're comparing that M5 against the M1, saying, oh, it's 6 times faster than an M1. They're not wanting the M4 people to buy it. They don't want the M3 MacBook Pro, right? They want me. They want me to buy it is what they're trying to do.
Oh, they want Jaime. Jaime's still rocking a 2019, I'm sure.
Wow. That's right.
Intel.
2.6 gigahertz, 6-core Intel Core i7 on my personal device, which I don't push that hard. And I every year watch to see, is this the year that macOS cuts me off at the knees? And they've not so far, even with Tahoe. So we'll see what happens coming in June and the fall. But I highly suspect that this might be the year that I end up having to actually upgrade to Apple Silicon.
But you leave Tahoe.
Well, then I'm pretty sure you're not doing Vision Pro development right now, Jaime, because you can't on
right.
Intel.
You are right how they use, they're not going to use the previous generation. They've got to use an earlier generation because, and I don't mean this in a sarcastic way, the upgrades are not that much. If you compare them, the previous to the next, yeah, it's a boost in some fashion, but it doesn't look that impressive from a marketing standpoint. And you're basically saying get a little bit more for another $3,000-$4,000, right?
Right. And from a user perspective too, I mean, if we look at our phones are in a way a status symbol, right? Mm-hmm. We could all live with just flip phones, right? Mm-hmm. I grew up without we had a house phone. I'm sure I grew up fine. I'm not scarred. I'm not bleeding because I, don't have my phone. So we have these phones. Do we upgrade them every year? No. We just talked about earlier. Some of us are still rocking 2-year-old phones, and they're great. We love those phones. But when it comes to these devices that we work on every day, our Macs, and I would argue that iPads fall into this category as well, that you don't need to upgrade them every year. And what did Jaime just say? He's got a 2019 Intel. Now we think, oh man, those Intel machines, they were slow and you could cook eggs on top of the keyboards and everything. And these Apple Silicons are so great. But he's got an Intel machine that still works perfectly good for him. My M1 Max in front of me works perfectly good for me. I can't think of any reason to complain about this machine. I throw a Windows 11 VM at it. I got my development going on with it. I do my gaming on it. I have nothing to complain about. These computers are just good. And especially looking at Jaime's now 7-year-old computer coming up on 7 year, right? These Macs can last. So Apple makes good computers. They have made good computers, touch bar and keyboards aside. But
hey, I like the touch bar.
I liked it.
I only had one work machine with it, and so I never got a chance to truly use it. But these machines, they're so good that you're really going to use them for 5, 6, 7 or more years. Maybe they'll get handed down and be used for another few more years by family. So could Apple do 2 releases this year? If they have the capability in their manufacturing pipeline to do it, sure. They might even be targeting the same people. That's fine. People that have a Mac that's 5 years old. It's okay. They just know if anybody buys in the spring, they're likely not going to buy in the fall. But that's cool. That they don't care about that. And I would love to see keep the progress moving on this. This is one thing I didn't like during the Intel years, is you had some years where the Mac just didn't do anything.
Yeah, that's true.
But the move to Apple Silicon, we now can say we have an M1 Mac, an M2, an M3, an M4, and M5, all these generations of chips. Apple doesn't skip a generation for their Macs, Mac Pro accepted. So it's nice that those options are there. There's no reason why Apple couldn't do 2 MacBook Pro releases, especially if the later one is a brand new hardware redesign.
So I'll just throw this in here and we can cut this out if you want. But over Christmas, I took my it's either 2014 or 2016, I don't remember. It's an Intel iMac. And I threw Linux on there, and it is absolutely killing it for everything now. I've got it running as a Jellyfin server, but it came back, I got everything back. It's the one that has the hybrid drive, and it is phenomenally fast with Linux on it. I don't have to worry about not having the latest Mac OS. So there is life for those.
That's the Fusion drive you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one, the Fusion drive. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I bought a 2013 a couple of months ago off of Best Buy used for $250 because people who know me know that I collect old Macs too, and I have data going back that you can't read on the new Macs, right? And I just heard today that the DVD burner thing, the USB thing, doesn't work on the new Macs. I haven't tried it myself yet today, but yeah. So I mean, and sometimes I want to run like Adobe Illustrator. I don't have a Pro account. I have a subscription, but only for Photoshop. But I'm an Illustrator guy. That's what the app I started on, right? So I have an old 2010 and a 2013 that I can run an old copy of CS6 on if I need to, right? So if I don't want to use, Designer or whatever the other thing is, the Affinity product.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we'll come. I think, and I can also throw in from the enterprise point of view. Like I was an enterprise developer, and I was in charge of the Macs and that kind of stuff in the iOS and Android teams. And you just didn't get, just because Apple came out with a new computer, whoever got hired got the new computer kind of thing, right? But people didn't just generally get, you had to really justify, flipping every Mac, and we just generally didn't do that, right? So it wouldn't matter how often Apple comes out with a new chip or whatever. The only thing people that think that really matters to are people who are doing like heavy duty video production or maybe 3D rendering. One of the people I hang out with on one of the Vision Pro forums does like film with the Cine, the Blackmagic Ursa cinema cameras, and it takes him hours to render a video. Those are the kind of people that would want the super duper chip with the lots of RAM, and they're paying through the nose for all that stuff from Apple.
Oh
right?
yeah. So. And you want the faster pipelines as well, right? It's not just the chip. It like you say, it's the pipelines within the hardware itself. I'm still rocking, and it's funny you mentioned about enterprise and so on. My day job machine is a 16-inch M1 Mac Pro, and it is still rocking it. I won't get a new one anytime soon, but I'm actually okay with it. It doesn't hurt it, even with the latest Xcode.
Yeah, well, like I said, Jaime, like with the Jaime Lopez calculus of like when did they cut my knees off kind of thing, right?
Which is probably this year.
We'll see. Speaking of, so I mentioned Photoshop and Illustrator here. So Apple's rolled out, I guess a couple of weeks ago, the Creator Studio. Now, this is you get a bundle of apps for $129 US per year, and includes things like Final Cut, Logic Pro, Dimensions. There's a music one which I can't remember the name of right now.
Logic Pro.
No, there's another one. Anyway, I'll come back to me. It'll come back to me in a second. But
Mainstage.
But I already own Mainstage. Yeah, that's one. I was going to ask you guys what the hell that is. But so yeah, I mean, I already own like 60% or 70% of these apps already, which I paid, for back in the day. I'm not going to be one of their customers. The other advantage of, I guess, the bundle is that you can also get the iPad versions of Final Cut and Logic Pro. But I heard from a Final Cut person that it's not the same thing. Like you can't take a project from iPad and move it over to Mac. Anyway, so the question is, I guess, is raising around: is this the same as? Are they going to compete with Adobe, or is this a death by 1,000 cuts? Everybody's going to subscription model.
Why not both?
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
In fairness, you do have the 1 year purchase, though, right? It's not like they removed the ability to do one-time purchase. They added, turn that frown upside down. They added a subscription option.
Yeah, but I got a post here from Stephen Stroughton Smith, I think his name is. He did a comparison of running these what he's calling the iWork packages, and you're constantly hitting these upgrade screens where it's, hey, upgrade to the thing and get even more stuff. And I mean, I guess $129 per year. I mean, when you consider that, at one point in time, I mean, Final Cut is like $350 US, I think now. It used to be $1,200. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not a bad price for all that stuff. I am opposed to paying for things I'm never going to use. That's the thing that irks me, right?
So I think that the price point is if you don't own these tools, the price point and the collection of tools itself is absolutely fantastic. I'm with you, Tim. I already own Final Cut Pro. I already own Pixelmator Pro. I already own Mainstage. The others, I'd like to have Logic to play around with, but I can live without it. So I'm not the candidate for this because in theory, you and I would be getting the updates for free, right? Which would be, of course, part of the attraction for the subscription model. I do agree that this is the Apple Creative Studio at this point, and I'm fine with that. But I think most people that would be users of many of these apps, Final Cut and Logic being probably the two big ones, maybe Compressor, they already have them. So I question, is this designed for the new users today going forward, in which case the price and the tool set is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, because it doesn't, I don't think, in my opinion, it doesn't compete with, like, Photoshop and Illustrator
Right.
and those kind of tools.
Agreed.
But you're right, it competes with Premiere, right, and Audion or something like that. I think that's the Adobe version.
Oh, yeah.
But, and Pixamator is a cool thing, but Pixamator we were all using, and then Apple bought it recently. Right. So,
right. And I use the other one. I mean, I've got Pixelmator Pro, and I always get them mixed up. I actually use the other one, Photomator. No, what's it called? See, I can never remember the name. The other one that came
Affinity
out before.
Photo?
No. It's the one that was by the same people, but it wasn't called Pixelmator.
Oh, that was Photomator.
It was, Dreamer or something like that.
Was it Photomator?
No.
Hang on, I got to look it up now. That's the one I use the most. But I always get it. Whichever one it opens the one I didn't want. Pixelmator Pro is the one I use. Photomator is the one that I have that it opens is great, but I don't use it that much.
Yeah, I've been using Pixelmator to do some of my screenshots for the App Store, right? Like where you have the little phone and you put the screen on the phone and you put a little caption over top of it. So I use some of that, but I have a Photoshop template that I created 1,000 years ago that I keep upgrading every time they come up with a bigger phone, right?
Yeah, actually, so funny enough, me too. That's what I do. I have a template that it's that workflow you're used to, right? I've used some fancy dedicated tools that are great, but my brain just goes to this workflow every time because it works.
Yeah, well, for those of you driving at home, this podcast is edited on Logic Pro. I'll just leave it there. Okay, so I put this other, and I've got a link here if people are curious about what the different packages look like from that Mastodon post by Strout and Smith. He's got a whole thread of shots and comparing the packages that you get with this new system. Because it also does it include numbers or is he just talking about the iWork package?
Yeah, I don't think it includes them. I mean, you get iWork for free now, right? I mean, technically.
Yeah.
But now there are paid offerings in Numbers, Keynote, and Pages.
Oh yeah, I mean,
are there?
It's the dime you to death template business model, right? I say that not to pick at Apple, but pick any app like that, and they all do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, when I worked for a fruit company a few years ago, I was introduced to some of the features in Pages that I didn't even know existed, that I don't think most people know exist, and it does compete with Word in that sense.
Oh,
right?
I use the iWork stuff all the time. I even for the day job where I've got Office and whatnot, I try very hard not to, just because I'm better with the other ones,
It has been a good 15 years since I've had a Microsoft Office product on my computer. I just have not used it. Even before I went to a Mac, I already had, I think, moved off of Microsoft Office. But then, once I got to iWork, had no reason to ever go back.
So I do want to sort of circle back on, like, I'm obviously a Vision Pro kind of guy, and Josh has one as well. So I'm going to throw him under the bus too with this. I teach Vision Pro. I'm on a couple of, and we're working on and I'll talk about it in the outro here, but we're working on a shared vision movie about developers working with Vision Pro and how it's changing our lives and stuff like that, and how we work and what we're doing with it. But so I'm curious to see what you guys think about the Vision Pro, where it is today with like the M5. I mean, it's a small market compared to most products on Apple. And then the rumors of the AR glasses are coming. Like, how do you see this whole spatial immersive environment and the tools that we're working with from Apple? Do you think it has? I mean, there are people out there who will tell you that the Vision Pro is dead from day one, but I can tell you I use it every day, so I don't think it is. But what are your thoughts on Vision Pro and the future of AR glasses at Apple?
So I think that there is a future, no question. I think I've never thought it was dead from day one. I just thought the market was questionable. And I still say the same thing now, which is I think it's a device or potentially both of them that are ahead of their time. but when their time arrives, it's going to be phenomenal, right? And by that I mean mainstream adoption, right? It's kind of like how the world had to get used to a smartphone. The world had to get used to us looking at our watches all day, doing a lot of things. And eventually the world will get used to people wearing some kind of device on their head, right? And I think it's inevitable, and I do think it's a good thing. It's not for me yet, but if I could, I would certainly have one laying around for when that moment hits, is how I would put it.
How about you, Josh? What do you think?
I think I echo that statement that it's early. It's earlier before we're ready for it. But I think how Apple has done it makes a lot of sense. Vision OS, I've said this before, I will say this again. Vision OS to me feels like a future computing platform. When you're working in it regularly, there's just something that's so special about a device that can virtually put things in your environment, persist them, and to be able to just naturally work with your hands, your eyes, and your voice to be able to get things done. Apple Intelligence and the new Siri is definitely stuff that could take that further, and that I hope will be available on future devices. I think there's two with the Vision Pro as a device. The first is obviously price. The price is going to limit adoption, but I think that's okay because I don't think Apple is there with being ready to release this vision. And I say this because here we are with the third major OS release, and there are still apps that come built in from Apple that are just their iPad counterparts. I take Maps as an example. Maps is still this 2D iPad-esque Maps app in Vision OS. I don't think that was the intent, and I think the intent was for something more 3D, taking advantage of Apple. What do they call in Maps? Their Street View.
Turn by turn.
No, not turn by turn. It's like the Street View where like you can like pan the camera and like
Oh yeah. Look around.
Look around.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look around would be perfect in Vision OS if you could just put yourself down somewhere and look around. That's not there, and I think the reason is.
You mean not there in an immersive?
Not in an
form,
immersive, correct. I feel this is a similar issue to the iPhone and the iPad. We knew the iPhone came out 2007, greatest smartphone. Well, some of us recognize that. Some of us needed to wait till the iPhone 3GS 2 years later. Anyway, so the phone came out first. 3 years later, we had the iPad, which, by the way, yesterday was the 16th anniversary of the iPad.
Woohoo!
But then Steve Jobs told a story later that year that he actually was working on the iPad first and then decided that technology could be used for a smartphone. I feel like glasses are where Apple wishes Vision OS was at, but from a technology level can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Vision Pro is this stopgap to show that, hey, we're doing something in that direction and not ignoring it completely. Which is why I think things like the Maps app are not there yet, because the Vision Pro itself is limited. You put it on, it doesn't expect you to be in an immersive environment and to move out of it. Something like Maps, you want it to be immersive to where you can see these directions, maybe virtual arrows of where to go down the street, but you're going to be walking and moving and everything. The Vision Pro is not set up for that. Vision OS on glasses would be. They're just not there from a technology standpoint.
That's why I threw the glasses question in there, because I think Vision OS is sort of the future of where glasses is going. And
I agree.
And I may be working on a conference talk, is why I'm asking this question. But spoilers. But I think that Vision OS in itself is a really cool thing. I mean, for me, like, Josh knows I use my Vision Pro more than most people that I hang out with. I join every Zoom call with it if I can. I watch movies on it nightly, TV shows on it nightly. Watch cinematic experiences on it, but and from having sort of delved deep into sort of the rationale behind what Apple's doing with the Vision Pro, the Maps, like you said, they don't expect you to put it on and walk out the door, right? They expect you to stay within a certain environment because they're worried about you tripping over your furniture and your dog and whatever, right? So that's another consideration. But For me, it's like a big giant monitor on my computer. And you mentioned before putting, windows all around you if you want. That's kind of cool. And to be honest with you, I use it like a pair of glasses. I gave up on the light seal. I know Apple's going to freak out when they hear this, but I gave up on the light seal months ago, and I just use it cantilevered off my forehead. So I have a little bit of peripheral vision as well, right? And there's a bit of glare when I'm in a bright environment, but that's sort of I think that's the future of where this AR glasses and perfect environment kind of thing comes from. I mean, the light seal to me is meant to make it look like a perfect environment, but even with the light seal on, there's still glare from the video you're watching, right? So it's kind of like I have either some glare issues like lens flare kind of things, or just regular everyday lens flare that would normally experience with regular glasses, right? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I mean, I know this is what I was going to say. Like we talked earlier about the upgrade paths on our devices. So I bought an M1 iPad when it first came out because I wanted to try. I think it was Stage Manager or something that only worked on M1 when it first, and I used it for 5 minutes and then turned it off and haven't used it since. But my poor iPad here is still. I bought my wife a new iPad for Christmas, and I got her iPad Air, which is considerably much better than my M1 iPad that I have on my desk here. Because of my Vision Pro, I don't use my iPad nearly as much. Mm-hmm. The Vision Pro, I can do things on the Vision Pro that I can normally do on an iPad. That to me, that's where the trade-off is. If I want to do something, like the iPad stays at my desk and it's tethered to its keyboard, and I very rarely take it to the couch like I used to do back in the old days. If I want to look up IMDb, I throw on the iPad or the Vision Pro, and I put the iPad on my face. No, I put the Vision Pro on my face, and I do all that kind of stuff while I'm watching movies and stuff like I would do in the past, mm-hmm. right? Anyway, So Jaime, you're in the banking sort of area, right? You're still doing the software banking mm-hmm. stuff. I wonder, how does that sort of field of work look at things like Vision Pro or AR glasses and that kind of stuff?
It's not top of mind in our industry. I think it's a better fit for manufacturing, aerospace. That's not to say you couldn't do what I've been suggesting for a while. If people have seen, I guess, semi spoilers for Breaking Bad, the fat stacks of cash kind of scene. I mean, wouldn't you want to see your bank account as fat stacks of cash? And then,
oh, cool, yeah.
And then you could also see, well, if I bought that new M5 powered MacBook Pro, how many fewer stacks would I have? In this digital world, you don't really feel the cash in your hands anymore. It's like, hey, number go down, not that bad. But if you see, oh my gosh, that's like an entire bed's worth of cash, maybe you'd feel different.
So you mean like you can open the real window, but watch the virtual cash fly out of it, right?
There you go. Yeah.
No, it's true. You're right about the whole tangible thing. I mean, I grew up before there was like remote controls in your TV. Like, we had to get up and go across the room and change the channel kind of thing, right? And tune in Sesame Street on a UHF antenna, yeah. Right? So, yeah, I missed the tangible side. I mean, I studied art as a tangible artist. I was painting and sculpting with my hands, And Vision Pro is similar to that in a sense. But you're right, this whole digital world, you look at your bank account on an iPhone and you're like, okay, what does that mean, right? So unless somebody gives you a graph, which you made in Swift charts or whatever, you're not really going to see, how the numbers are moving up and down and that kind of stuff, right? So it's interesting that you chose a metaphor of like stacks of cash.
I think there is, Jaime mentioned like engineering, and I think that is always one of the ones that's fascinated me the most, or medical for that matter, right? If I could access the plans to my house, be standing in my house, put a headset on, and see, in the walls where the cables are, where the pipes are, so that I don't drill through them, that I think would really bring home a useful tool right there. But
yeah, that's neat. Yeah,
I do think though that the glasses are the consumer version that will take off in a big
Definitely.
Way. Yeah, the augmented reality part of it. Yeah, well, even like seeing the wiring in your walls and that kind of stuff, or the fat stack, that's all AR, right? So those are the future. And I remember seeing apps back when AR first came out on the phones and stuff where you could stand out on the street and hold up your phone. I think it was. I want to think. What's Swarm? What was Swarm before?
Foursquare.
It was Foursquare. Yeah, I think it was a Foursquare app or something like that, where you could stand out on the street and hold your phone up and look through it like a viewfinder and see, okay, this restaurant over here has pizza and this restaurant over here has egg rolls and that kind of stuff. But I don't know wherever happened to that. But I remember seeing that app back in the early days, right?
Yeah, I remember trying that too.
So, all right. Well, like I said, we convened here today to talk about, as developers, working day in day out, on how we're using AI in our job. I mean, notwithstanding that just Amazon just let go 1% of its workforce because they claim they're using AI for that kind of stuff. That's not the agenda of this discussion. This discussion is about how are you using AI to help you do your work either as an indie or teamwork developer. So what are your thoughts on that, Peter?
So yes, I use AI. I use it in several different ways. So I'll sort of break them down. As a developer, I'm a big fan, as you guys all know, of Claude Code, and I use that a reasonable amount. And I primarily use it for very rapid prototyping of an idea on something. Also, sort of as that pair programming idea of, hey, I've written this thing. Take a look. Does it look like it's going to work? Help me refactor this, and maybe even definitely write some documentation is a good one for it, and write me the tests that I know if I had to do it I would never write. So in that context, that's how I use it as a developer. I don't really, I don't sort of use it to do everything. It is very much an assistant to me, but I have found that very fast, rapid prototyping is a great use for this. Especially, funnily enough, I thought it was good with app development, but recently I've been using it to solve some problems with my game development, in particular math, because math is hard, and especially in games, and it's been really helpful with that. Now, the other areas that I use it, though, is I do use it from a productivity standpoint, in that sometimes it's just quick to say, hey, whoever, don't want to trigger devices. So, hey, whoever, remind me this, set an alarm, read me a message, all those kind of things, right? So I sort of talk to it. But interestingly, it's become a very good research tool as well. Go out and find me a whole bunch of information on subject X and then give me a summary. So that's how I use it. It is definitely a part of my daily routine. And yes, I've used it to write some production code, but in an assistant to code that I've written, not as a complete replacement. So that's me. That's how I do it. And I've been doing it that way for a while.
So you haven't done, I'm going to come back to your tooling in a bit, but you haven't done any vibe coding, like where you ask the AI to build you a feature?
I've used it to plan features. And I have found that it is good at that, especially when it comes back and it says, okay, I want to ask you some questions. Like, for example, what database are you thinking of using, or something like that. So in that context, yes. But have I out and out just vibe coded an entire thing? No. Not because I don't necessarily think it can't do it. I don't need it for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you are as a developer. Jaime, how are you using AI, or are you using it?
Yeah, I'm not using it in a particularly sophisticated way, and I probably should work with IT to get the official licenses for some of the coding tools. So I've mostly been using it, believe it or not, in the browser. Like, hey, take a look at this. Thankfully, it's a lot of open source repos. Take a look at this repository. Help me figure out, why is this failing in this particular way? Or, hey, I received this thing. I don't know what it is. Can you tell me? And it's done a pretty bang up job of doing that. Use it to create sort of live arbitrary dashboards of information by using the Gemini's Canvas tool, where it kind of builds you like a tiny little React app. All of that stuff is working pretty solid. So I'm pretty excited for the idea of, actually using either like VS Code with like a, Claude Code command line thing, or seeing if we have licenses for like Cursor or something fancy pants. It's always hard to know in the list of, hey, here's this new hot thing that's going around on X. Yeah, that's probably not something I can use. I have to wait until IT goes through and like, yep, that's on the officially allowed list. Does that make sense? It's kind of a mishmash.
I know, Josh, I know you're minimally using it. So what's your perspective on it?
Well, part of my minimal usage is similar to Jaime's issues with IT. So with the day job, I'm limited to using a licensed version of Copilot, and having that integrate with Xcode has not been very easy. And this license of Copilot does not allow MCP usage, so I can't make use of like Sosumi and things like that. So I find very little value in my day job, which is where the majority of my programming is at, to be able to use it. So the times that I have used it have been in a chat with Claude on the web to prototype, to explore SwiftUI architecture when it comes to like data and navigation split views. I had to do something there. I had it help me figure out how I might put together a CK sync engine when I was looking at some different CloudKit stuff before. And in those cases, it seemed pretty useful. I think because that was my earliest exposure outside of my IDE, it felt hard to see it as something that I could quote unquote vibe code with. But on my personal projects, on my own Mac, I do use it more than I have been before. Primarily, I've used it for documentation purposes. I love having everything documented. Even though it's my app, no one else is going to see my code. I'm going to document this thing professionally. Like, I want all the parameters documented, what's going on in the function, what's the return and everything. That's just how I roll. Okay. And I put it was a view modifier with a custom type and a view extension that had a function to call it and add this modifier to a view. And it not only wrote the documentation for me, but provided sample usage that I wasn't even expecting it to add in there. So I was blown away by that. I've come to this thing where I'm realizing I'm looking at AI in the wrong way. And part of the issue is me, because I like Swift. I like working with code. I don't want to be peopling.
What do you mean by that?
I don't ever see myself as a manager. I don't ever want to be dealing with people. I want to deal with code. You can always force code to do the right thing. So I feel that's been my holdup with AI, is I see it as I'm having to then manage something. And I'm trying to change my mindset to where I see the AI tool as like the juniorest of junior developers that just needs my guidance to get something done. But I also have to not be so micromanagey with it. Let it do the work, and then I can grade it afterwards and correct it. And I'm thinking if I can get that mindset in me, I have like 40 like tiny little app ideas of things I've put together over the years. I'm like, I'll get to this someday, and I never have. I want to take one of these small ideas and just see in a week, could I get this done, and just see what happens.
Yeah. Well, for me, I probably should use ChatGPT to look it up, but I think the word is autodidact. I'm a self-taught developer, right? And so, and I've worked with junior developers before, and I've had, senior developers on my team as well, like people that I've hired as a contractor when I was working on apps, and I was sort of running a studio, as it were, right? So I kind of approached it that way. Like, I started out with ChatGPT, and because a friend of mine wrote a Mac client for it, and then I didn't really use it much for coding, and I've got Alex Sidebar, which connects right into your Xcode, and it can actually look at the project, and it can read the files, and it can look through the project and sort of source things out and figure things out. And then when I think last year Google I/O they kept talking about vibe coding and few other things. And I had to add a feature to an app. And even though I had used little bits and pieces of like our show description on our About page for this podcast was written by ChatGPT. I gave it some parameters and it wrote a nice little synopsis of what this podcast is about, right? But so Alex Sidebar was really good. And then that's when I discovered Claude, because it was using Claude. But at the same time, I was working on a new project in the last year, and I had to get back into WordPress coding, and I had to get back into PHP, which I hadn't, I'm self-taught PHP coder too from way back in the day too. Yep. And, it saves me having to dig through the WordPress codex. It saves me having to learn about marching boxes when I'm doing like trying to read a medical scan. It saves me from. I had one case where I had a couple of apps that I wrote in Objective-C, and Jaime and I joke about it all the time. Is the Device Tracker and Pi Day Countdown. Those are two apps that started out in Objective-C, and over the years I've been putting in all the stuff that Apple adds every year at WWDC, and I started adding Swift into it, and lately I started adding Swift UI into it. And I had written a piece of one of the apps, and I realized that I needed to do something with notifications. But I hadn't touched notifications in Objective-C in a long time. But that said, I've probably done 1,000 notifications in Objective-C. You guys probably have too. And it's boilerplate stuff, right? So I asked the AI, I think it was probably Alex Sidebar, I said, can you, and it was using Claude Sonnet, can you create a notification so that this objective view can talk to this Swift UI view, right? And it did. It did it in like 30 seconds. And I thought, this is amazing. I didn't have to go and do any of that heavy lifting, any of that yak shaving, if you know what yak shaving is. And like, it's also like a rubber duck debugger too, right? For but it's an actual person, or not an actual person. It's an actual, the way I look at it is because they've gone out and they've scraped all the sort of Stack Overflow posts and all the blog posts that are out there over the last few years, you're sort of getting a reasonably good understanding of how it works. And I think in Alex Sidebar at one point, I was able to point it to the Swift documentation on Apple's website. And so it uses that as a resource to sort of look at how my code is written for me, right? But coming back to this vibe coding thing, I had to add a feature to the app, and I sort of said, well, in a separate app, I said, create a new app. I said, make me an app that does this particular thing, like plan a person's day, kind of thing. And it actually wrote out, views with calendars and to-do lists and all that kind of stuff. And I literally could take that code and graft it into my app as a new feature, right? So that was kind of cool. And then lately, I've been using Alex Sidebar. If you don't know about Alex Sidebar, but the founders of Alex Sidebar have joined OpenAI now, so I'm not sure if the product is going to carry forward or that kind of stuff. But what I liked about it was I found that Claude, for the various AIs I've tried Cursor, I've tried ChatGPT, and I've tried Claude Code, and I find Claude is the best at doing Swift, in my opinion, right? Anyway, I get the best results out of it, right? So now I've gotten my Anthropic license, and I've plugged it into Xcode. And so now instead of asking Xcode or ChatGPT, which is built into Xcode to figure out the problem, I tell it to use my paid Claude Code license. And it so if I ever hit an error and I don't want to go and research the error, I can click on it. It'll say generate a fix, right? And it'll go through and it'll look at the code that I've written, look at where I am, where my cursor is in the file, and it'll sort out what needs to be done or what the error is trying to tell me and that kind of stuff without having to go through, and bug my senior or junior developer friends to sort that stuff out. And so that for me works, is using Xcode in that. And then similar to what you guys were saying, I used to use Google, or not Google, I use Google as a verb. I used DuckDuckGo, and I would ask it a question and say, how do I've got this product, this, device, I've got this, like whether it's a home alarm system or I'm renegotiating my mortgage or whatever, I'll ask it a question related to what the current problem is, right? And like you said, it goes out, scrapes the web, and brings you back a summary of what something means, right? Or the various bits and pieces. So I've now started using that ChatGPT client that my friend wrote to ask it questions instead, and it just goes out and pulls out the best of the web and summarizes for me what's going on. That's kind of sort of So I use it. I use AI or what LLMs, I guess, to do that kind of stuff. And so that's the tooling set that I use. I use Cursor in VS Code for doing WordPress and PHP, and I use Chat or Claude Code inside of Xcode. There are some. It's Xcode too, so it's buggy sometimes, right? You have to quit it and delete drive data, and you have to clean the build folder from time to time. And I'm also working on with Skip Tools, and what's nice about it is I can ask it can actually go and read Skip Tools documentation and provide me fixes that work and bring in code in Compose that I can use on the Android side of my app, right? So, which is kind of cool, which saves me having to go and do, the yak shaving thing, learn how to shave a yak, and learn how to make wool, and learn how to, wash the wool, and then learn how to knit, and then, and then find out that I can just go to the store and buy a sweater for $24, right? So, I started out when I started in iOS, it was kind of like, there were people out there creating template chunks of code, and this is 2010, right? You could go out and you could search for them, and they would have examples of like how to make a button and how to do this and how to do that, and you could piece together bits and pieces of code. And I think that's kind of where how I use LLMs and these coding tools. So I want to come back to Claude Code because I know I use Claude in like an IDE, right? So, and I understand Claude Code is different. You do it on the command line. I think Jaime and Peter, you talked about that?
Yeah. So I, just quickly to touch on, you mentioned Xcode, and I did the same as you, which was I gave it my license and was like, hey, I want to use this. I'll just say my experience has been the limitations of Xcode prevent it being as useful as you would think it could be. And so therefore, I always have a terminal running with Claude Code running in it. And I also have my IDE of choice, which could be any. They pretty much all work with this now. But when you install Claude Code, the CLI, I'm using the Z editor, ZED, and I can open a terminal there. And if I just run Claude there, it'll say, hey, I see that you're running in Z. And it sort of hooks itself in to be able to detect what code I've selected. But essentially, I'm still running it at the terminal. And that is the way I do it absolutely every time, so that it has full access to all my project files if I choose to give it that, plus the web and everything else, without worrying about the limitations of Xcode and stuff. So
it can make the changes in the
exactly
files,
correct, yeah. And I can vet them one by one, or I can just say go at it, or I could do it myself. But if I do it in Xcode, it's going to give me the instructions, but I still got to do it, right? So I do it on the terminal, and I do it in a way, probably a separate conversation here, but very incremental. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make. They think you can tell it one thing and it'll make the world,
Oh, yeah. Yes, I often have to correct it, and like it'll repeat itself 27 times, and you have to say to it, like, should you not be refactoring all these instances of the same lines of code? And, oh, yeah, you're right. I hate the smarmy, oh, you're right, Tim. I'm sorry about that.
But yes, that's why I always use it from the terminal, and I have the terminal open somewhere for whatever project I'm working on, regardless of what the language or the tools. I do agree with you, though. I think it has been the best one for Swift, but recently I started doing something with TypeScript, and I have found it to be absolutely phenomenally good with TypeScript.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I use it. Basically just straight up terminal. I have a pick later on that makes it better or more annoying, depending on which way you look at it. But I just go as raw and basic as I can.
And how about you, Jaime? You're using terminal version as well?
No, I've not set that up, but I certainly could. It probably would make things more efficient for some of the things I'm doing.
Yeah, I have tried the Copilot as well. I mean, I find it's a bit obtrusive in Xcode. It kind of like wants to jump in and fix things for you right before you even ask it to, which I find annoying. I found in Claude Code I can use or not Claude Code in VS Code I use cursor a lot, right? So and it seems to be pretty good at sorting stuff out. Because the WordPress codex doesn't change that much, right? So it's not like you can ask it. It's not going to invent ways of doing things, right? Which I think is the danger. And like you said, Peter, I think you have to look at, and like Josh said, you have to look at it like a junior programmer. You can't you assign it things to take care of, right? And to do the boilerplate work for you, because I don't know if you guys remember this back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, when you were building a table view or something like that, you could literally go into the app documentation and grab a line of code and plunk it right into your app, and it would do the thing you wanted it to do. But they've changed the documentation since then. It doesn't have that kind of functionality built in anymore, which is a shame in my opinion. But
I miss those.
Yeah, those were the days. So I do have there's I'm sure a percentage of our audience right now who are just like ready to spit.
Oh, yeah.
So I've read threads online where people are like, any engineer or a developer that's using AI is like, not really coding. What do you guys think about those kind of sentiments? Like, how do you? I mean, I think it's inevitable that this is how code is going to work, right?
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about that?
I'll go first and be the controversial one. First of all, this is just my opinions. Don't blame anybody else on the podcast for what I'm about to say. The people out there who are just straight up no AI, no nothing. If you use AI, you're not a coder, you're not a whatever. I hope that you're still walking in front of those carriages with your white flags warning people that a car's coming. Sort of get over it. It's here to stay in one form or another, certainly not the form it's in now. But everybody eventually will get used to it, just like everything else, right? Nobody, everyone thinks everything new is going to take their job and that it's no good. And I do agree a certain extent that it's no good, but I want to just add two things here, maybe my two big views on this. People, I hate that term AI slop for anything, but especially for developers.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I need to put a reminder in here that AI slop and the way this works is it is basically feeding itself off of all the work developers have ever done before now. So we created, in essence, that slop that's feeding it to a certain extent. So it's only really showing the best and the worst of everything we've all done in the past as developers. And just bear that in mind, right? It's learning from us. So that's number one. But number two is, it's like everything. Like you say, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you just tell it, I want to do this thing, and don't give it enough instructions, it will be, just like you guys have said, a new programmer. It's going to probably go with the first thing it finds, which won't necessarily be the best. It'll do the job, but it probably won't work right. But that's why I do believe these tools should only be used by people who are already developers. So that when I tell it something, I can be, think about those horrible JIRA tickets, right? All that information you put in there, those requirements that do this, that don't do that. You have to give it all of that information, which means you need to know how to do that to begin with, right? To be able to tell it those things. So tell it, use this database, but check that people can't do SQL injections, those kind of things. So I do strongly believe that existing developers, regardless of your level of competence, you are the ones that should be using these tools and essentially teaching it and telling it what you want as if it was a new developer. And then eventually it will get better. and you'll get better at telling it how to do it. And that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, the truth of it is this is the worst version of it we're going to have, right? It's only going to get better, right, as it evolves. So what do you think about the anti-AI sentiment, Jaime?
I'm kind of a pragmatist when it comes to this. I'm not on either polar opposite end of AI is Terminators or AI is, going to replace all programmers, last one out, turn out the lights kind of thing. I'm more on this will help accelerate the need and desire for even more software and for people who can fix software that's been vibe coded. So I don't see the program refreshing going away. I think this is yet another new tool in our tool belts, and the people who have that good blend of understanding how to use and when to use AI and when to just do it the old-fashioned way and understand how to do it the old-fashioned way, I think will be, miles and above their competition in the marketplace. And so I do look at this as like, look, I think the narrative matters a lot. If I just asked you, hey, Tim, do you think fire is dangerous? You'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Because you'll have a certain framing in your head. But I say, hey, don't you have a furnace? What do you use to cook your food? Right? Do you have an automobile which has explosions? Unless you have an electric vehicle, I suppose. It uses controlled explosions to do what it does. I think it's very clear that we have fire extinguishers and fire suppressors and sprinklers and all sorts of things to deal and avoid and mitigate the dangers of fire. But it's not viewed as a purely positive thing nor a purely negative thing. Just a pragmatic tool. That's how I'm viewing this AI stuff.
Yeah, I will sort of maybe take a tangent and say that I'm disappointed at the social media posts that I come across that, as soon as I hear that AI voice, those AI voices, I just stop the video and move on to something else. But because there's a lot of fakery out there, right? And if I want to hear Rachel Maddow, I now have to go to MS Now to sort of see her. So something I found on YouTube. But coming back to the sort of sentiments, I mean, how do you feel about it, Josh, and opposition to using AI altogether?
So if we're going with AI altogether, I see a negative right now, but that's because of things like fake videos from people using it for creative purposes, which might be stealing other people's work. Okay, I think that's a negative. Sticking on the coding front, though, I do agree with Peter that, and with Jaime, that it is a tool that, okay, we've got it now. I do think if you have this tool, you need to know how to wield it. Just because I have a hammer and a saw doesn't make me a carpenter. I might be able to, drive some nails and cut a board, but I did that, but I'm still not a carpenter. AI as a tool for coding, can it take some steps to build something for you that maybe you could then plug yourself into an IDE? Great. But like was said earlier, I think there's more value in it for people who already know about programming, about coding, who understand what's being made by it. Because in the end, even though this tool might be able to do 90% of your work, it can't launch your product for you. And I'm not saying that as a challenge that someone should go out there and make an AI product that is going to build your app for you and do your marketing page and create your icon.
And get Apple to approve it. Yeah,
exactly, right? That still has to have a human element for a reason. This is still just a tool. So you still need to know what it's doing. Even if you treat it as a junior developer, that means you have to be able to mentor it, to guide it to build what you want. That doesn't make you a business owner. That doesn't mean that you're just a manager. You need to understand its output, because while it is built on top of every public piece of code known to man, again, legalities of that aside, it's still imperfect. It will still make mistakes, and it may not always be easy to correct those mistakes, especially if you don't know how it works. So as a tool available to us developers who know what we're doing, when it's able to produce this great looking API of, hey, here's how to use a CK sync engine to do some syncing with CloudKit. And then you put it into Xcode and, oh, there's 19 errors. Why isn't this working? Oh, because 4 of those methods it totally made up. They don't even exist on a CK container. I may have known this from firsthand experience. But you need to know where that issue is to solve it. as opposed to just saying, well, that's wrong, this is not compiling. That isn't always going to work. It might work with some tools, but that's not always guaranteed to work. Computers are still always going to lag behind humans and our wonderful brains. So,
yeah, I mean, you have to understand best practices and good design and good workflow and stuff like that. I was working on an app recently that I was refactoring it into Swift UI, and so there's an existing app on the App Store, and people have data stored in it and that kind of stuff, right? And part of the app lets you add new records and modify old ones and that kind of stuff, right? And it's going to be an upgrade from people who are using the old version to the new version. And when I went to do it, I'm using a file to store the data in because it was not using core data or anything or Swift data or anything like that. And the AI had used the same file name from the Objective-C version to the Swift version. So if you were foolish enough to install it over top, you clobbered your old data, right? And I had to say to the AI, look, what about people who have existing data in the old format? Why are you using the same file name? Like, that's the kind of silly mistakes that it makes from time to time, like you were saying with the inventing, like it'll pull a Java method and try and run it in Swift. Those, and you have to say, hey, there is no such thing as that in this case, right? Or in the case of when I'm using skip tools, it'll put like @observable macro in the Android side. I'm like, you can't do that on Android. Oh yeah, you're right, Tim. I'm sorry about that oversight, and off it goes.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right in the. That is where the part about being a developer already comes in, that you're seeing the AI, you're about to go down that bad path. I don't know about you guys. I'm sure it's happened to you. It happens to me quite a lot, where it'll do something and I will immediately know, hey, no, that does not exist in this version of iOS, or this is deprecated, move on, And as soon as you tell it that, it gets it back on the right path. But if you're not a developer who maybe doesn't attend conferences, watch videos, documentation, whatever, and you don't know that, you're going to let it go down that path to oblivion, right? And I think that's the key difference.
Yeah. There have been tangents that I've gone on with AI, and I've just thought, no, let's go back to where we were at 9:00 this morning, because what you just did was a big, giant, steamy mess, right? So. And then you go back in and try it, or a day later, and it seems to be fine. But yeah, there are sometimes if you let it go, if you commit often, is what I found. If you don't commit and it goes down one of these sad paths and it makes 27 changes to your project, you're done if you don't have a good working version at some point, right? So I was happy with what it was doing, but I should have been committing as it was going.
I have learned from that, definitely. When I get something that I'm satisfied with, whether it was me or AI or both of us, when I'm satisfied with it, commit so that whatever happens from this point forward, at least I was happy at some point. I absolutely agree with you. But I did want to just add in one extra little note that I always say when I'm, I had this conversation very recently with developers, and without going off on a tangent, there's the developer who is, you must write the best code ever, and it doesn't ship until it's right, and so on and so on. And then there is what I call the person who wants to make a product who happens to be a developer and knows that at some point this thing is only as good as when you ship it, right? And, so this whole thing about no end user should care what you use to make something, how you did it, whether you used AI or whatever, and you should look at it from their perspective and say, am I now shipping the thing that they wanted? And if people are obsessed with how you made it, then it's the wrong conversation to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I can tell you, working on teams, sometimes you can't get your PR through because somebody doesn't like the way you put a space in something, or tabs versus spaces, or like you didn't use the proper syntax or whatever, and you have to strip out all your comments and blah 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 blah. But like Josh was saying earlier, and for myself, like I'll write something and 5 years later I'll go back to to need to go and work on it again to add a new feature, and I'm like looking at it going, I don't remember what the hell I was thinking.
Right. But
so
you're
document.
You are, the you at the time only, was as good as you were, right? Yeah, of course. 5 years later, you're going to be 5 years better, and we all do it, right? Like you say, we look back and we're like, what was I thinking, right? But to put my engineering manager hat on for a second, there is that point at which you have to say it works, it's solid, okay, got it. It's okay to ship this, and sometimes I have to tell developers, look, if I gave you all the time in the world, you would keep working on this forever and never ship it. and it would be refactoring it tomorrow with the new thing that came out, and now there's a new version of the OS and so on. And I think we all have to take that into account when we're deciding, all right, is what AI did with my help good enough that it solves the problem? Because that's what development is, right? Anyway, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I agree. I believe in the minimal viable product. You kind of get it out there, and yeah, I tend to ship things, and I mean, I do get people to test them if I can.
Oh, sure,
right? Or I test them myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I one thing I got to say about QA people is quality assurance people. They are, I mean, they're gold because they find things that you didn't even think about, like When I worked on banking, they would open up the app, they would log in, they would start a transaction, they would go have lunch.
Yeah.
And then they would come back and try and finish the transaction, because that's what people do with your phone,
you're right.
with your app, right?
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, and maybe this is a conversation for another day, but I will add, now that you've brought it up, I would not trust AI by itself to do my QA testing. No question, I would go humans every time. Because, they are going to do that weird thing, right? Like you say, or they're going to be doing something and fall asleep and the app's open and it's open for 12 hours. I agree completely.
Yeah. I've written some stuff recently that had some heavy commuting and computing, and the iOS shuts it down. Like, they're sorry, you're wasting too much of my resources. It's something that was written by an AI. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up this conversation here. I think we've covered a lot of bases, right? So we have so now we move to the pick section of the show where each one of us brings, in my case, I bring a lot, but if people bring what they think is cool and people should know about. So, Peter, what do you got for us?
So
speaking of
I was
AI.
going to say this was a perfect pick. I came across this about a week ago, and okay, admittedly, there are times it drives me crazy. But what it does, there's this extension for Claude Code. Of course, there'll be a link in the show notes called Awesome Claude Code on GitHub. Shout out to the author. I will not try to pronounce their naming because I know I will get it wrong. But what it does, it actually adds sound notifications. So, for example, right, we've all done it. You start running a task and you have it thinking about something and you're distracted by something else, or you intentionally go work on something else. And what this does is when Claude Code, for example, needs your attention, or it's finished, or a sub-agent has finished, it'll take advantage of your wonderful Mac and tell you, the agent needs your attention. Your sub-agent has finished. And it's fantastic for that. Now, if you're doing a lot of very quick tasks, it might drive you crazy. And if you forget and it's running a long task, it's scared me a couple of times. But that's what it does. It just adds voice notifications to a running Claude instance. Only on Mac, I should stress. I believe it's... Oh, sorry, I think it's actually Mac and Windows.
Oh, okay. We'll forgive you for that. But that's cool. I do that in my testing. Like, I'll sometimes, if I'm running automated testing, I'll put sounds in there so I know what phase of the test it's in. So
exactly.
So I can.
For the longest time, I had one in Xcode that would say "build completed," except it drove me nuts after a while. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I can imagine. Jaime, what about you? What do you get for a pick?
I decided to go because I knew we were going to talk about AI and all the fancy pants new stuff. I said, let's go with the old school. This is a YouTube video of a VHS recording of Learn Turbo Pascal, which is what I used back in the day. It was the first thing I used, a nice blue screen thing. And that's how we did it back in the day, kids, when we were when we were not thinking about, avoiding the dinosaurs. We were popping in these things into VHS machines and learning by listening to somebody talk and show us stuff rather than, having something do it for us. Definitely a blast from the past.
Cool. All right. Josh, what do you got?
All right. So sticking on the AI theme, this is more of a reminder for me because I've had this tab open. I've got this in my project as if not used it yet, but I've heard people that have, and they say it works really well for them. It's the Swift Translate package plugin that you can put into your Xcode project, and it will either basically through the command line, but it'll go into your Swift catalog to your English or whatever your source language, your English strings, and then reach out through your AI of choice to be able to translate it. As localization is something that I'm really trying to get serious about this year, I figured this might be a good way to kind of get that going. And then if I have to get, manual fixes for different phrases that are wrong from the AI, that I can do that. But this seemed like a good application for AI as a developer to be able to get that ball rolling and doing something I should be doing, which is better supporting users of my app who speak different languages.
Nice.
Yeah, I have a couple of apps. I have a couple of apps that have like 8 or 9 languages in them, and I worked on one that had 12 at one point. And so it is kind of challenging. Like we used to have, sometimes you have translation services, but since I'm an indie developer, I have to do it all myself.
Right.
I started out using a service, but now I just use, a chat GPT or something to do translation. So this sounds a really cool idea. The only thing I would want it to do is to make the multi-language screenshots for me in Photoshop.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Well, so when it comes to screenshots, I have
But that's the same idea, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've looked at different ways of automating screenshots and, making UI tests that then...
Well, you can use Fastlane for that,
Yep.
right?
You can, except I've never got it working. I followed the documentation to get Fastlane working just for that, for the screenshots, and it doesn't work. It fails. It just completely fails to run. And I could never get it resolved. After years of trying to get it working, I've given up on Fastlane.
You have to use XUI tests, which I've gotten pretty good at in the last few years.
So
with AI's help.
Yeah. So you automate the UI tests.
Sorry, Josh, I was going to say, what you need to do is take that Fastlane script and ask AI, what am I doing wrong?
I almost need to have it look at the Fastlane documentation because it literally matches up with...
There you go.
What was with the documentation, and I've just given up. I actually just recently took Fastlane out of my project. I got tired of trying to use it.
Oh my gosh!
Well, so my pick, I got a few picks here, folks. So just strap in, as I like to say. I spend a lot of time on Vision OS and working with apps, and we're waiting for the sort of killer apps to come along. And the other day, I saw an app that came out, and I'm not sure if it's written by a friend of mine who wrote a drawing app that works with the Logitech Muse pen, right? This works with your finger too, or with your gestures, and right. But it's called AirDraw, and what it is, it's this whole menu on your left hand. You have this whole menu that appears with all these different brushes and metal textures and flat textures and the luminescent textures, and you can draw in with like tubes, or you can draw, and you're drawing in space, like you're using a Logitech pen to make a big circle or a squircle or whatever you want to call it, right? And then you can also draw in cubes, so you can make these big Tetris-like cube shapes. And I don't know if you ever saw those cube puzzles that used to take apart and you'd have to put them back together again.
Yeah.
When you were kids, like something like that, like you can paint with cubes, and it's really kind of cool. And they've added physics and gravity to it. What happens with Vision Pro is when you're in a room and you look around the room, it maps the surfaces in the room. It's part of the built-in AR experiences. So when you create an object and you apply gravity to it, it lands on the floor, it lands on your desk or whatever. And with the physics, you can tap things and they'll spin away from you, or so you can make like rings and have them like, connect together and make like a chain kind of thing. It's a really fun little app, and it's free. It's like it's the coolest things on the Vision Pro, and the Logitech Muse unfortunately aren't free, but the app is, and it's a really kind of cool app. So I highly recommend you take a look at AirDrop. Maybe I'll put a link to Justin Ryan is one of the consumer level pundits that are out there sort of promoting Vision Pro, and he's got a video on how AirDraw works. I'll put it up so the people who don't have access to Vision Pro can try that out. But having said that, and I could probably do 1,000 picks on Vision OS, but I have got a GitHub page, which I'll put a link in the show notes, called Vision OS Resources, that you can go and check out. And I update it regularly with, sample code and different things, tools and things like that you can use with if you're interested in Vision Pro, or even if you're interested in doing a Vision Pro or Vision OS app that, which may have implications for AR glasses coming soon to a face near you. I don't know. But in terms of other things I want to talk about too, was there's a Canadian conference coming up in Calgary in, I think it's the third week of July. And this is, I'm going to be doing a talk on Vision OS, obviously, on there. And there's some workshops before and after. People like Daniel Steinberg are coming. Dave DeLong from X of Apple is coming. Stuart Lynch is coming to do talks. Some other friends of mine from across Canada, as well as around the US and Europe, are coming to do talks. So take a look at swiftrockies.com. 24th to 26th, I think, is the dates of July of 2026. Another thing too, if you're into Vision Pro or Vision OS or whatever, we're working on a documentation. I'm not sure if it's going to be an app or a movie or whatever, but it's called Shared Vision, and it's a group that we belong to, and we're working on documenting what we're doing and how Vision Pro and Vision OS is changing the way we work and how we use it on a daily basis. There's cinematographers in there, there's app developers, there's people who've been working in Blender and Unreal and Unity. There's people like me who come at it from the iOS side of things. So it's called Shared Visions, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that website. That said, it's also, Shared Vision was started by Joseph Simpson, but he's sort of like, he's got a team of people working on it. But he started a site called Step Into Vision. And if you're into Vision OS development, check out our office hours. There's a European office hours that happens usually on, I think the office hours is Friday, generally speaking, in the afternoon. Check out Step Into Vision. There's all kinds of documentation on how to do different, and Joseph does little labs, and other people contribute to that. But we do have office hours where we get together once a week and have a 2-hour discussion with iOS or Vision OS developers from around the world. And how most of us, notwithstanding Jaime, but how most of us get together. I'm Indy. Josh works from home. Peter works from home. We belong to a group that Evan Stone started called Swift Remote Studio. So if you look up swiftremotstudio.com, it's a group we get together online. There's a Slack channel where we chat about things. But we do have a coffee call on, I think for me, it's 12:30 on Wednesdays, where we get together for like an hour or so and just, have the water cooler conversation kind of stuff about what we're working on. But more importantly than that, on Fridays at my time, 3 p.m. or 3:30, we have a discussion about our weekly goals, what we've accomplished, what we're working on for the next week or so. And it's a nice sort of touch point for all of us, who don't have. I mean, I know you two guys are working in companies, so you probably have regular, what do you call them, a daily stand-up kind of thing. So it's kind of like a weekly stand-up for those of us who are working independently from home. So that's called swiftremotstudio.com. Check that out, and there you go. So I do want to do the outros, and I'm going to ask you guys like where you're, how people can get in touch with you. But I also, part of my podcast, if you've ever seen the interviews I do one-on-one with other developers, I have these questions that I ask. So I'm going to randomly pick a question for each one of you as you do your outro to wrap up things here. So we'll start off with Jaime. So Jaime, people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
I'm on Instagram as @devwithahair.
All right. So Jaime, your question is, what is the best sandwich?
I tend to go for a roast beef with Swiss. Kind of don't know what I always choose. I probably go with mustard or maybe a like garlic aioli for the sauce if I'm feeling fancy. But that's kind of my go-to sandwich.
What kind of bread do you put that on?
That changes with like the mood and seasons. I think a sourdough bread works pretty well, but a nice baguette is fine too.
Okay, cool. And so, Peter, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
Yeah, you can find everything me at peterwitham.com.
All right. And so what is your most treasured possession?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's see. My most treasured possession would be, oh my gosh, I don't want to offend anybody in the family. I think it would be a really old camera that I have. It's an old Kodak camera that was one of the first digital cameras.
Oh, wow. I have one of those too.
But back when things like 640 by 480 were considered like super deluxe, you know?
Yeah, I bought my wife a camera back in, I want to say like probably 20 years ago. And then it was after, the Quick Take was the first sort of digital camera I saw. But yeah, we got into the Kodak ones early, and then we went to Canon. And of course, now we just use our phones.
Yeah, right.
So, Josh, people want to get in touch with you. Where would they find you?
Well, they can find me on socials as Josh Hrach. Look up the spelling in the show notes, or to my website, Josh's Pad. That's PADD, like a Star Trek pad.com.
Okay, so what number am I thinking of?
17.
Nope. Wrong again. Well, actually, the real question for you is, what's the most used app on your phone?
Oh, the most used app on my phone. Oh, that is a tough one.
There's an app called Screen Time you can look in your phone.
You know what? I'm going to have to do that, but I'm pretty sure when it comes to number of times that I open it, I think I have an answer. But as for what it actually is, my guess... apparently, since upgrading the 26, it's turned off. So much for that. I would say my most is built in. It's messages, just because I like texting with my wife a lot during the day. So that is probably the one that I'm going to a lot. As a third-party app, I would say I go into Ivory a lot for Mastodon.
Mm-hmm.
So those are probably my two top third-party, or my two top apps on my phone. But mainly communication.
Okay, cool. Well, my name is Timitra, Timmitra, and you can find me lurking on Blue Sky. You can find me on Mastodon. You can find me on Substack. You can find me on Reddit. You can find me on this new social network called A, which is for Canada, and spelled how you think it's spelled. Yeah. And so until next time, we'll see you guys.
You've got to have a random question.
Well, no, yeah, but I mean, you can't see the list of questions.
No, but I can.
So what's your question?
I have one for you.
Okay, what's my question?
What is your favorite dessert?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, because I just I have a variety of desserts I go to on a regular basis, but I think my most favorite dessert is probably chocolate mousse.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Now I saw a video yesterday on PBS. I was watching TV in the afternoon because I'm Indian. I can do that, right? And he showed how to make chocolate mousse. I'd never seen how to actually make it, but yeah, I had the best chocolate mousse I ever had was on St. Catherine Street in Montreal at the end of a dinner, and I'm telling you, it was fabulous. All right. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.
This has been another episode of the More Than Just Code podcast. If you want to find out more about the show, you can visit the More Than Just Code website at morethanjustcode.com. There you can find a summary and show notes of each episode. We list links to the apps, code, and news that we mentioned on the show. If you like the podcast, tell your friends, leave a comment on the website, or write a review on iTunes. And please recommend us in your favorite podcatcher. All of these things help others find out about the show. We really appreciate your help with spreading the word. We'd love to hear from you, so use the hashtag AskMTJC and we may mention you on the show. Friends of the show can also join us on the podcast Slack channel. Please consider supporting the show by pledging any amount on patreon.com/MTJC. Every dollar pledged helps a lot. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
And now we're in the after show. Welcome to the after show.
Hello,
Now you
after
make me want to
show.
make desserts.
Yeah, I'm
What's
hungry
that?
now. Yeah.
I was on this thing recently, so I find myself I'm more of a cook type of thing. I do savory dishes, not so much sweet. But my wife needed some egg yolks a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "What am I going to do with these egg whites?" And so I decided I'm just going to try making meringues, and they actually turned out pretty well. And so then we spent the next 2 weeks perfecting meringues and doing colored meringues and everything. But then I had all these egg yolks. What do I do with the egg yolks? So then I started working on creme brulees, and that was fun. But I feel like I'm going with withdrawals. It's been a week since I've done that. Maybe tonight I have to do one of those.
Yeah, but your cholesterol thanks you. You know. Yeah.
I've been ignoring that. Should I not?
It depends on your age, right?
Yeah. Ask your doctor. Yeah.
Nice.
See, I'm not much of a cook. I have tried, didn't go so well, but I can tell you, with all the ice I've had in Texas the past couple of days, I have found every conceivable way that I could think of to take the contents of the fridge and put them on a cracker. And most of them were not good. Yeah.
It was delicious, though, wasn't it?
Oh, at the time, it was like, well, it's this or nothing, you know.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, Peter, I'd probably asked you this before, but with your crazy Texas accent, where are you from, actually?
So I am very close to being a London boy originally.
London, a Londoner.
Essex on the coast. I am the archetypal Essex boy from the 70s but specifically the 80s. So yeah, that's about as Essex as you can get. Yeah.
So we have a TV show or a radio show here called CBC on CBC. They often ask people, "How far is that from Reading?"
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So funny enough, my some of my grandparents lived in Reading, so it was not that far at all.
Oh wow,
yeah.
So, but like Essex, so is it like on the outskirts of London?
Yeah,
or?
No, it's sort of like when you leave what we would call London proper, you basically hit Essex. So,
but which way are you driving?
Yeah, so you're going to go west, and the best way to describe it, if you see London on a map, and then there's like the little bits that on the coast that sort of try to make their way towards London, and that's where I was, literally sort of directly east, a fraction north. Places you may have heard of, very close to where I was. Colchester is one of them. Chelmsford is another one. And ironically, the town very next to my town was actually called Witham. And I'm pretty confident I own it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Oh, yeah, I see it there on the map.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't know if you know this, but I was born in St. Albans.
Oh, I didn't. No. Sweet.
Yeah. And we went to London for my significant birthday this year, and I got to go. We were having dinner one night, and this waiter who was a little full of himself, but a little bit reminded me a bit like Tim Curry sort of kind of character, right? And he got around to asking us why we're here, and we said we're going to St. Albans, and he turned out he lived in St. Albans. So he gave us a sort of the quick way to get there, what train to take, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, went and spent a day in St. Albans and got to see where at the hospital where I was born,
nice.
the house I lived in, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So and I think we bought a trinket from there as well.
Nice. I'm always shocked when I go back to England and visit my family. My parents and sister live over there still, and so I'm visiting my hometown. I'm always shocked how much it's changed. And how, like, in particular, I was really upset last time I went there, and I was like, wait, there's now a Subway, literally a Subway shop in the high street of my town? What is this? Yeah.
It's not authentic?
Yeah.
I was like, this is just wrong.
It's like a pret-a-manger.
Yeah, but maybe I'll get a meatball sandwich while I'm here. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like, if well, in Canada we have like McDonald's and things like that, but on the East Coast they have like lobster rolls and things like that. I wonder if they do something like can you get a nice haggis at a haggis sub at a Subway in London?
I hope not.
Oh, I need to get me a lobster roll this week.
All right. And Josh, are you originally from Phoenix, or were you from originally?
Oh, no, I was born in a suburb of Chicago and was raised there.
Oh, yeah.
Not in the place I was born, but
I can hear the Chicago drawl in your voice.
I wish I could identify that. It's so weird with accents. You can't tell you have an accent, but everyone else can.
Isn't that funny?
But I was born and raised around Chicago, and I moved away from there when I was 28, 29. That's when we went to Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And been here
ever since. Did you go there for work, or?
I went here because my wife hated snow.
Oh, that's fair.
And I love my wife.
Is she from Chicago as well? Or?
Yep. So she knew what it was like to escape from it. She actually was living here when we started dating, and so when it became time to escape the snow, she's like, "Let's just go back there." Okay, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Did she come here for school or something like that, or
no? There's a whole story with that, but in short, it was basically I'm never going to move to Arizona, so she moved to Arizona.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's funny. Yeah, I was instructed that I can never have a job that requires me to move to California. Not a thing. So, yeah.
Really?
I was like,
just that's against the rules?
That's the rules, yeah. So I was like, oh, well, okay, that's fine. But I'd like to have a winter. That'd be nice, Well,
how are you enjoying this one?
Yeah, well, I probably not this week, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about every time I've been to San Francisco, it doesn't matter what time of year, it's always the same temperature, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not quite like because of the bay, it gets cool at night and what have you, right?
Yeah, so. It's funny. I work with some folks who are in San Francisco, and every time I'm like, just don't bother telling me what paradise is like today. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, it gets cold at night, like I said. And it's all relative, like today in Celsius, it's minus 13, which is like it's below freezing, right? But it's been so cold here recently, but we got this, we got hit with this huge storm this year, and we've had polar vortexes and whatever through here that I can go outside with like a long sleeve t-shirt on and go to the recycle bins and whatever, and not stuff. And it's like it's not. You get used to it. Which is the strangest thing about winter, right? Because I know in the middle of summer when it's like 40 degrees Celsius, or I think it's like 80 or 90 degrees for you guys. I'm complaining about how hot I am, right? So it's we go in extremes here in Canada in terms of the weather, but. Well, yeah, but we don't have any choice because now we can't go to the United States.
Well, yeah, sorry, maybe you're next on the list after Greenland. I don't know, but maybe if the polar shift keeps happening, eventually some of that hot weather from the other side of the planet will roll over the North
it'll be
Pole.
Like San Francisco up here.
Yeah, exactly. Then you'll be like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah, it's always the same temperature.
Yeah, it's just paradise, and I'm miserable.
Yeah. All right, cool. Any parting thoughts there, Jaime, before we sign off? How are things in Seattle? Is it cold up in Seattle today?
It is 46, which Google tells me is like 7.7 Celsius.
Oh,
give you a sense. It's not bad. It's this is pretty much where we hang around during the winter. We hang around lows of 44, 45, and a high of about 51. Very narrow.
So you didn't get hit with this crazy weather that Texas got and stuff?
No, it's kind of surprising how it was just like this snow schmear from like New Mexico through big parts of Texas, and then just kind of swoop up to New York City, hitting a lot of folks, but not the Pacific Northwest.
I mean, just go back to the Panhandle, buddy. It's waiting for you. Yeah,
yeah, back down there, down in the West Texas town of El Paso.
Meanwhile, I've not seen any snow at all, and I am not complaining.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Doesn't matter when we all move to another planet. We can just, it'll be fine.
Yeah, well, who knows what the weather will be like there, right?
Yeah, hot and dry is what folks. I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should call it a night, and thank you for your time and for coming on the show. And
yeah, you bet.
Exciting.
Thank you for inviting
conversations.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure.
All right.
Right, folks.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.